He lives next door, not in a dark alley, not in some far-off city you'll never visit, not in the shadowy depths of a documentary you watch while feeling safe in your living room. He lives close enough that you may have walked past him a dozen times without noticing anything unusual. Perhaps you smiled at him once. Perhaps he nodded politely in return. Perhaps he held the door open as you rushed by. And then you forgot him. You forgot him because he did not stand out, because he wore the mask of normalcy so convincingly that no alarm bells rang, no warning lights flashed. That is the most terrifying truth about serial killers. They do not look like monsters. They are not grotesque or obviously dangerous. They do not shout or rage or stumble incoherently through life. They are ordinary. They are calm. They are patient. They smile. They wave. They laugh. And beneath that surface, they hide something extraordinary. Capacity for repeated, deliberate violence. A serial killer is defined not by a single act of rage, not by a momentary loss of control, but by repetition across time. They commit multiple murders in separate events, often with extended intervals in between. These are called cooling-off periods. These breaks are not lapses of desire or fleeting guilt. They are strategic pauses, allowing the killer to return to society, to work, to family, to routine, while maintaining their secret obsession. During these periods, the compulsion to kill does not fade. It simmers, grows, evolves. The mind rehearses, imagines, and plans until fantasy alone is insufficient. Reality must eventually satisfy it. Understanding serial killers begins with understanding their distinctions from other types of extreme violence. Society often lumps mass killings, spree killings, and serial killings together, but the differences are profound and crucial. A mass killer strikes explosively. One place, one event. Chaos erupts, screams echo, and the destruction is immediate, public, and impossible to ignore. Attention is often central to the act, sometimes sought, sometimes a consequence. The act is dramatic, the victims often symbolic, and the violence indiscriminate in scope within the context of that one event. Mass killings are eruptions that shatter reality in a single moment. A spree killer operates differently. They move, striking multiple locations in quick succession. There is no cooling-off period, no pause to return to normal life. Their violence is urgent, sometimes frantic, often desperate or chaotic. They collapse emotionally in real time as their acts unfold. Unlike mass killers, they may not crave attention, but their acts are visible, unpredictable, and short-lived. They leave behind a trail of immediate chaos that forces the world to notice. And then there is the serial killer. Their crimes are separated by pauses that allow them to exist in the world without arousing suspicion. One disappearance may be overlooked. Two may seem coincidental. Only over months or years do patterns emerge. They operate in cycles of planning, execution, and reflection. Each act is deliberate, measured, and internally rewarding. The serial killer thrives on dual existence. One life is public job, family, friends, daily routines. The other is private, obsessive, violent. Fantasy often begins long before the first murder, growing in detail, depth, and intensity until reality becomes necessary. The act of killing itself is a form of psychological fulfillment, completing a cycle of tension, anticipation, and reward. Time, repetition, and invisibility are their greatest allies. Unlike mass or spree killers, serial killers are methodical, not chaotic. Victim selection's another defining feature. Mass killers often target crowds or locations, symbols of larger grievances. Serial killers choose victims with purpose. Each person may fit a psychological, symbolic, or ritualistic template. Missing persons may be dismissed as coincidences. They are defined by pattern, compulsion, and motivation. The term evil, logic or psychological drive, repetition and reward systems. Their acts are deliberate, and invisibility is what makes them so terrifying. Understanding serial killers is not about sensationalized myths. It is about observing patterns, examining motives, and recognizing the chilling reality of someone who lives among us unnoticed, calculating each move and waiting for the right moment. The next step in understanding is to explore their motivations. What drives a person to commit repeated murders? What internal forces sustain such acts over years, even decades? It is here we begin to see the mind of the predator, the cycles of desire and reward, and the psychological engine behind the methodical violence. Why does a serial killer kill again and again? The answer is never simple. It is never a single act of rage or impulse. Each murder serves a purpose, internal and deeply psychological, one that satisfies a craving no ordinary activity can replicate. One of the most common drives is power, not the kind measured in status, but the absolute control over another human being, over fear. In a world where the killer may feel ignored, this control provides a private universe where they are entirely dominant. In that moment, they are untouchable, omnipotent, and complete. Closely tied to power is control through ritual. Many serial killers follow precise, repeated behaviors. The timing, sequence, gestures, and even the tools they use are part of an intricate mental choreography. These rituals are not arbitrary. They are anchors, providing structure and satisfaction. Each step reinforces the psychological reward. Each repetition strengthens the compulsion. Then there is fantasy, often the earliest and most persistent driver. Long before the first murder, fantasies emerge. At first, they may seem harmless, imaginative diversions. But over time, they grow vivid, detailed, and emotionally compelling. They become internal rehearsals, scenarios refined over months or years. And eventually, fantasy alone is no longer enough. Reality must fulfill it. Some serial killers are sexually motivated, though not always in the way popular culture suggests. Sexual compulsion is often a fusion of desire, dominance, fear, and thriller psychological cocktail that creates an almost addictive internal state. Once this internal reward system is established, it cannot be ignored. The compulsion is not just about gratification. It is about control, mastery, and psychological reinforcement. Others are mission-driven. These killers do not see themselves as predators in the traditional sense. They perceive themselves as enforcers, correcting perceived wrongs in the world according to their personal moral code. Their victims become symbolic, a threat or a societal ill. This rationalization allows repeated murder without guilt. And still others are motivated by thrill and risk. The hunt itself, the careful observation, planning, and execution provides an intoxicating sense of superiority. To remain unseen, to manipulate perception, to outwit society, becomes a form of psychological stimulation. Each successful act reinforces confidence and emboldens the next. Mistakes eventually happen, but the internal reward often outweighs the risk. All motivations share a single characteristic. They are self-enforcing. Killing satisfies desire, resolves tension, or reinforces identity. The brain learns that this behavior works, and repetition becomes inevitable. Serial killers do not act randomly. They operate according to cycles of compulsion, reward and reinforcement that escalate over time. They adapt to circumstance, study victims, and refine methods with each crime. This intelligence, patience, and adaptability make them especially difficult to detect. Only over time, with patterns emerging, can the truth be discerned. And the most critical point, serial killers are not defined by evil. It creates a boundary between us and them, allowing us to believe that such horror exists only in distant, unknowable places. Evil explains nothing about motivation, method, or repetition. It obscures the psychological reality. Serial killers are human, fantasy and reward, yet at extreme and terrifying levels. Their lives are compartmentalized with remarkable skill. The public persona neighbor, because the world expects monsters to be loud, erratic, or obvious. Patterns are key to understanding. Victim selection, timing, ritual, escalation, and method are all clues to the internal logic. Law enforcement does not chase evil, they chase consistency. Serial killers leave traces, but subtle, distributed over time. By the time a pattern emerges, years may have passed, and the predator has often become more confident, more refined, more difficult to detect. The horror of serial killing lies not in unpredictability. It lies in the mastery of invisibility. They erode society slowly, quietly, like a predator practicing patience. One disappearance may escape notice. Two may seem like coincidence. Only after multiple acts does a pattern begin to reveal the invisible rhythm of their violence. And here is the ultimate chilling realization. The serial killer you fear is not the chaotic, screaming monster in the movies. It is the calm, invisible person who can blend seamlessly into life. While planning and executing calculated violence, the terror lies in knowing that the unseen, the ordinary, the familiar, may conceal something horrifying beneath the surface. The next step is understanding how behavior and morality intersect. What happens when patterns are visible? How does society interpret compulsion? And why is the label evil not enough to describe what these people do? Understanding this will reveal why serial killers are terrifyingly effective at hiding in plain sight. Calling a serial killer evil is emotionally satisfying. It creates distance. It reassures us that these monsters are otherworldly, removed from normal society. But it is a dangerous oversimplification. It explains nothing about method, repetition, or psychological reinforcement. Serial killers are not supernatural. They are not mindless demons. They are humans functioning at the extreme edges of compulsion, fantasy, and learned behavior. They think, plan, adapt, and observe. They know right from wrong, yet the internal rewards of their acts outweigh external consequences. Their actions are deliberate, functional, and repeated, not random eruptions of chaos. Behavior is the key. Each act of murder serves a purpose. Psychological relief, identity reinforcement, stimulation, or control. Over time, the act becomes self-reinforcing. The mind associates murder with internal reward, and repetition escalates desire. This cycle, fantasy, planning, execution, and reward, is the engine that drives serial killers. Understanding this is critical. It is not the horror of unpredictability that defines them. It is the predictable, structured, and deliberate nature of their acts hidden behind a mask of normalcy. One of the most striking aspects of serial killers is their capacity for compartmentalization. Their public life, a job, a family, social circles functions normally, They maintain routines, interact socially, and often appear kind, polite, and trustworthy. Behind this facade, however, lies obsession, ritual, and meticulous planning. Fantasy often precedes reality for years. Murder becomes the fulfillment of an internal narrative, a cycle refined in the mind long before it manifests in action. Observation and mimicry are crucial to their success. Serial killers study social norms carefully. They rehearse facial expressions, conversation patterns, and casual behaviors. Their ability to blend in is not accidental, is intentional, cultivated, and practiced. Society expects monsters to be erratic, loud, or visibly disturbed. Serial killers exploit this assumption. They are often the most normal people in the room, the least suspicious, until patterns emerge over time. Patterns themselves are central to detection. Victimology, timing, location, method, ritual, and escalation all leave traces. Law enforcement does not hunt evil. It hunts consistency. The traces are subtle, scattered across years. The first act may leave no discernible clue. The second may seem coincidental. Only after multiple incidents does the rhythm of violence become apparent. Serial killers are frightening, precisely because they master invisibility and patience. Not because they act impulsively. Ritual and control are also fundamental. Many serial killers follow highly structured behaviors, step-by-step actions that must be performed precisely. The order, timing, and even gestures are psychologically significant. These rituals are not merely superstitious. They anchor the mind, create a sense of order, and heighten internal reward. Every repetition strengthens compulsion. Every deviation from ritual may increase frustration, escalating the urgency of the next act. Sexual compulsion often intertwines with these drives, though rarely in the simplistic ways popular media portrays. For many, sexual gratification is fused with dominance, fear, and thrill. The experience is addictive, creating a psychological feedback loop that is difficult to ignore. Mission-driven killers rationalize their acts as correction or enforcement of a personal moral code, depersonalizing their victims and suppressing guilt. Thrill seekers are intoxicated by risk, observation, and manipulation, continuously testing the boundaries of detection while basking in internal reward. Despite differences in motivation, the unifying principle is psychological payoff. Repetition is not accidental. Murder resolves internal tension, reinforces identity, and provides a state of exhilaration unattainable by ordinary means. The act is deliberate, learned, and refined over time. Serial killers do not operate in chaos, they operate in patterns. And that is the true terror, the combination of intelligence, patience, and invisibility. The horror is not that they are unpredictable, but that their actions, will deliberate, remain unseen until patterns finally emerge. One act may go unnoticed. Two may appear coincidental. Years may pass before society recognizes the rhythm of their violence. By then, the predator has grown more skilled, more confident, more invisible. The final unsettling realization of this segment is simple yet chilling. Serial killers do not appear monstrous in obvious ways.
They appear ordinary.
They appear normal. They appear to belong. And in this ordinariness lies the greatest danger. Because invisibility is mastery. Because patience is power. And because understanding their psychology is the only way to recognize the subtle signals before it is too late. In the next step, we confront the limits of society's understanding. Why conventional morality and the word evil fail to explain the terrifying, efficiency of serial killers, and how their behaviors continue to evade detection while they live among us. We will explore adaptation, invisibility, and the patterns that make serial killers both human and horrifyingly effective. The word comes icily, evil. It is a term we reach for when confronted with incomprehensible acts so dark and deliberate that the mind demands a simple explanation. But labeling a serial killer evil is comforting, not illuminating. It draws a line between us and them, a line that reassures us that monsters do not live next door. And yet, understanding the real psychology behind repeated murder is far more terrifying than a mere label ever could be. Serial killers are not supernatural. They are not unthinking beasts. They are humans operating at extreme edges of compulsion, planning, and adaptation. Their acts are methodical, their fantasies elaborate, and their ability to remain unseen extraordinary. This is what allows them to walk among us for years, unnoticed, while committing crimes that defy comprehension. Behavior is central to understanding them. Each murder is part of a cycle fantasy, planning, execution. Psychological reward that escalates over time. This cycle is self-enforcing. The first act is not random, it is deliberate. The second reinforces desire. The third sharpens skill. Over time, repetition entrenches patterns, creating a predictable rhythm invisible to casual observers. They are terrifying not because they act without thinking, but because they think, plan, and adapt with precision. Compartmentalization allows them to survive in society. They maintain ordinary jobs, families, and friendships while harboring secret, obsessive lives. This duality is so seamless that colleagues may confide in them, neighbors may trust them, and friends may admire them, all while a hidden world of ritual, planning, and murder thrives beneath the surface. Society expects monsters to be chaotic, erratic, or visibly disturbed. Serial killers exploit this expectation. They are quiet, controlled, and perfectly normal in public. Observation is their art. They study routines, mimic behaviors, and rehearse social interactions. Charm, politeness, and calmness are not incidental. They are survival tools. The more convincingly they perform normality, the more invisible they become. Their prey is not always external. It is the very perception of those around them. The gaps in our attention and expectation, patterns define them. Victim selection, timing, method, ritual, escalation, all are clues to the internal logic. Law enforcement does not pursue evil. It pursues consistency. The traces are subtle, scattered over months or years. One act may leave no evidence. Two may appear coincidental. Patterns emerge only through careful observation. And by that time, the killer is often more skilled, more confident, and even more invisible. Rituals anchor the mind. Many serial killers follow strict sequences in their act's timing. Gestures, tools, even positions are psychologically significant. These rituals are not random or superstitious. They are internal scaffolding that heightens reward and reinforces compulsion. Each repetition strengthens desire. Each act of control reinforces identity. Deviation can increase frustration, which fuels the urgency for the next act. Sexual compulsion often intertwines with these motivations, though rarely in the simple ways popular culture portrays. For many, sexual gratification is fused with control, fear, and thrill, forming an almost addictive feedback loop. Mission-driven killers rationalize acts as enforcement of personal moral codes, depersonalizing victims, Thrill-driven killers are intoxicated by the hunt, observation, and risk. The variations in motive matter less than the internal reinforcement system that drives repeated behavior. The single thread connecting all serial killers is psychological payoff. Murder resolves internal tension, reinforces identity, and provides emotional rewards that ordinary life cannot. Repetition is inevitable. Intelligence, patience, and meticulous planning make serial killers both human and horrifyingly effective. Perhaps the most chilling truth is this: the predator you fear is rarely obvious. They are neighbors, co-workers, classmates, or friends. They smile, converse, and integrate perfectly into society. Invisibility is mastery. Patience is power, and understanding the psychology behind their acts, without oversimplifying with words like evil, is the only way to see the patterns before it is too late. This leads to the final unsettling insight. The fear does not come from randomness. It comes from clarity, from understanding that these acts are structured, repeated, and deliberate. That the predator is not someone who cannot control themselves, but someone who can control themselves perfectly, hiding extraordinary violence behind ordinary appearances. And the question that lingers long after the chapter ends: if the most dangerous predators can blend seamlessly into normal life, if they can observe, adapt, and remain unseen for years, then how many have already passed among us, invisible, unnoticed, unrecognized? No answer can fully satisfy that question. It is unknowable, but the insight remains. Serial killers are terrifying not because they are unknowable. They are terrifying because they are knowable, predictable, and yet invisible in plain sight. This is the world of the serial killer. Methodical, patient, invisible, and chillingly human. A world where ordinary life can conceal extraordinary horror, where patterns hide beneath calm, and where understanding psychology is the only light in the darkness.